are we all here for? Stories. Do you like stories? Yeah. You do? What kind of stories do you like? Any kind of story? Well, what do we have coming up? Any special? Valentine's Day. Did you know that Valentine's Day is my birthday? Do you know my name? Anybody know my name? Caroline. What's my name? Kurt. Kurt. So what we call it, because I work with kids, and sometimes I have surprise birthday parties for myself, but we call it Curtaintine's Day. So next week you wake up and you say, Happy Curtaintine's Day. Okay? Yeah, we'll see. All right. So I thought since Valentine's Day / Curtaintine's Day was coming up, I could tell you guys stories of the heart. So one time my heart was beating so fast because I was running that. Is that a story of the heart? You know what I mean by story of the heart? It means a love story. Speaking of a love story.
I saw you yesterday.
You did. Now it's 2 days in a row. How are you? You guys came for stories?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can have a seat on a seat, or you can have a seat on the floor. And your sister's gotten so big.
Wait, I didn't know if we even saw her.
I just saw her right now.
Oh, for the first time.
Thank you guys for coming. So I was just saying, since Curtaintine's Day is coming up next week, that I would tell stories about Kurt. Is that what I said? No. I said I would, since Valentine's Day was coming up, I would tell stories about hearts. Stories of the heart, or love stories. Who likes a good love story? Who likes Beauty and the Beast? Is that a love story? Is Cinderella a love story? You know any other love stories? A lot of Disney movies have love stories in them, don't they? Yeah. All right. Well, maybe I'll tell a story that you will love. How's that? Okay. Well, for my first story, the name of the story is The Snow Queen with a Cold, Cold Heart. But I'm going to need your help in telling the story. Do you guys like to help tell stories? Okay, good. All right. So in the story, there are some characters. Okay? And whenever I mention the character, we have to do something along with the character. So you got to really do some good listening. All right? So if I say that there's a snow queen with a cold, cold heart, we would do something like this. Everybody go like this. And go. Can you do that? You ever do that when you're cold? Okay, let's try it. There was a snow queen with a cold, cold heart. Okay, how about a daughter with a cold in her nose? You go. You can go this way or that way. All right, let's try that one. There was a daughter with a cold in her nose. Then there's a daughter with a cold in her chest. And we go. All right, try that one. A daughter with a cold in her chest. And then there's the daughter who was beautiful but sad. And for her we go. So there's the daughter that's beautiful but sad. And And then there is a young and handsome prince. And for that we go, ta-da! Ready? A young and handsome prince. Ta-da! And then there is a milky white steed. Anyone know what a milky white steed is?
No.
It's a horse. And what sound does a horse make? So whenever you hear galloping or a milky white horse, you go. All right, you guys are doing good. And then there's one more character, and he is a wily and a wicked wizard. And for him we go, ha 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 ha. Ready? Try that one. You gotta make your eyes go shift back and forth, roll, ball up your fists like this and go, ha 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 ha. All right, you think we got them all? All right, let's try it. We have the Snow Queen with a cold, cold heart. We have the daughter with a cold in her nose. We have the daughter with a cold in her chest. We have the daughter who is beautiful but sad. And then we have a milky white steed. And then we have a young and handsome prince. Ta-da! And then we have a wily and a wicked wizard. Ha, ha, ha. All right, you ready for the story? Okay, we could probably be good with that, right? Be all done? Say good night? All right, well, once there was a snow queen with a cold, cold heart. Now, she lived in a land way up north that was cold and snowy, and the sun never shined. And the north wind was king, and it snowed every day. Now, it's a cold story already, right? Now, the Snow Queen with a cold, cold heart, she had 3 daughters. The first daughter was the daughter with a cold in her nose. The second daughter was the daughter with a cold in her chest. And the third was the daughter who was beautiful but sad. Well, the daughters used to love to go outside and play. And they, in the middle of July, they could play in the snow. And they could make snow angels. And they could make snowmen and all kinds of snow people. And then they could make snow forts and they could make snowballs. And well, on this day, they were doing probably their favorite thing to do, and that is to build a snow fort and then have a snowball fight. And they were having a great time when all of a sudden they heard the sound of galloping. And who should come riding in on a milky white steed? Was a young and handsome prince. Ta-da! Well, when the prince saw the 3 daughters, he instantly fell in love. But he didn't fall in love with the daughter with the what? With the cold in her nose. He didn't fall in love with the daughter with the cold in her chest. But he fell in love with the daughter who was beautiful but sad. Well, he hopped off his milky white horse and he ran into the castle. And there he ran and he saw Who?
The Snow Queen.
The Snow Queen with a cold, cold heart. And he said to the Snow Queen with a cold, cold heart, he said, I would like to marry your daughter. Not the daughter with a cold in her nose. Not the daughter with the cold in her chest. But the daughter who is beautiful, but seems sad. Well, the Snow Queen with a cold, cold heart said, you may marry my daughter if she will have you, and if you do one thing. And he said, what is it? What is it? And she said, over there, yonder, is a forest. In that forest is a wily and a wicked wizard. That wizard is the one who put an enchantment on this land. And that's why the sun never shines and the ice never melts and it snows every day. He said, if you go and you find this wily and wicked wizard, and you take this potion and you throw it into his face, the enchantment will be broken. Then, and only then, can you marry my daughter. Well, the young and handsome prince, ta-dam! He said, I will do it. So he ran down the stairs to the castle, out the door, and he jumped onto his milky white steed and he galloped away to the enchanted forest. Now he kept galloping on his milky white steed, and he kept galloping on his milky white steed until he got closer to the enchanted forest. Well, who happened to see him coming was the wily and wicked wizard. Well, do you know what he did? He ran back into his little hut and he grabbed his bag, his magic bag that was full of evil and dirty doings. And out of his bag, he pulled out a thunderbolt. Well, there he saw this young and handsome prince. Ta-da! And as that young and handsome prince got closer, he took that thunderbolt and he threw it at the prince and knocked him off his horse. Well, that young and handsome prince, ta-da! He jumped up immediately, he ran and he took the potion and he threw it into the face of the wily and a wicked wizard. And guess what happened? He started to shrink and shrink and shrink until he turned into a little marshmallow. Why, it was the strangest thing that the prince had ever seen. But he took the marshmallow and he plopped it into his pocket. He got onto his milky white steed and he galloped back to the castle. He went and there he saw the Snow Queen with a cold, cold heart. And he said to the Snow Queen with a cold, cold heart, I have done it. I threw the what? Potion. The potion into the face of that wily and wicked wizard. And here you go. And he threw the marshmallow into the lap of the Snow Queen. Well, she thought that that was odd, but she thanked him. And he said, now you must keep your promise. I must marry one of your daughters. Not the daughter with the cold in her nose. Not the daughter with the cold in her chest. But the daughter who is beautiful, but sad. Well, she said, as you can see, the enchantment is broken. The sun is shining, and the snow has melted. And my daughter, who is beautiful, is not very sad anymore. Well, he took her by the hand, and they were heading out. When the queen said, hey, and if you see my daughters downstairs, let them know that I'm going to serve some hot cocoa. And if they're very good, I will put a marshmallow in it. And guess what? Everyone lived happily ever after.
Wait, did they get married? You didn't tell us.
Oh, yes. They got married and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Thank you. All right, you want to hear another story?
Yeah.
This story is about a brave girl whose name, now this story comes, I guess, somewhere way down in South America. Now this girl, her name was Delgadina. Can you say that name? Delgadina. Delgadina. Now, one day, Delgadina found a little red snake. And it was probably the most beautiful snake she had ever seen. So she brought it home. And she painted a little box, and she put the snake inside of the box. And she put the box underneath her bed. Well, she went to bed that night. And when she woke up in the morning, the snake was 3 times bigger than it was the day before. Well, when she showed it to her mother and told her mother said, well, this must be a magic snake. You must take good care of it. And Delgadina did. She took care of the snake. She fed it every day. And every day, guess what? It got bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, one day it got so big that it could no longer fit in her room. And the next day it was so big that it could barely fit in her house. So her mother said, Delgadina, the snake is too big to live in our house. You must bring it out into the forest. So Delgadina did. She went out to the forest, because they lived in the forest. She went out to the forest and she told the snake to now live in the forest. So the snake slithered into the forest and found a deep, dark cave and lived inside of the cave. But every day, Delgadina would visit the cave and visit the snake and bring it food. And every day, the snake got bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, after some time, Delgadina's mother said, the snake is too big and we are too poor to feed the snake every day. It is time for you to let your little red snake go and let it live with other snakes and the other water creatures. So Delgadina sadly called her little red snake, little red snake, and she stamped her feet 3 times. And when she did that, the snake came out of its cave, out into the forest, and went to Delgadina. And Delgadina said, my mom says we are too poor to keep feeding you, and it is time for you to leave. Well, the little red snake, which wasn't so little anymore, said, your mother is right. It is time that I must go. But before I go, I want to give you a gift. And the red snake told Delgadina to take her hands and rub them into his eyes. So she did just as the snake told her to do. She took her hands and she rubbed them into his eyes. And he said, now, whenever you wash your hands and you shake them dry, gold coins will come from your hands. He's a magic snake. Yes. And now Delgadina had magic. So the snake said goodbye and slithered into the ocean. And Delgadina watched it disappear. Well, time passed, and Delgadina and her mother became very, very rich. But she was so kind that she shared much of what she had with anybody who needed it. She helped anyone who lived near her, near the forest. And word spread of this Delgadina, who was so kind and could shake gold from her hands. And now, since this is a love story, there was this king. Well, he was a prince, actually. And the prince had not married. And he heard about this girl who was so kind, who could shake gold from her hands. And he said, I think this girl would make a wonderful princess. And he wanted to meet her, but he didn't know how to meet her. So he sent for anyone who knew Delgadina in his kingdom. Now in this kingdom, there was an old and wicked woman. And she was full of jealousy, and she hated that magic snake. So she decided that she would pretend that she knew Delgadina. So she went to the prince and she said, I know this Delgadina. If you, she probably talks like this, I know this Delgadina. If you give me a coach made of gold and 4 white horses and a beautiful dress made of diamonds and pearls, I will bring her back for you. Now, the prince, he had no idea that she was an evil woman. And he had no idea because she knew dark magic. Did I tell you that?
No.
Oh, yes. She knew dark magic. And he had no idea that she knew dark magic. So he got her a golden coach and 4 white horses and a beautiful dress made of
Pearls and diamonds.
yes, diamonds and pearls. Now, this wicked woman had no intention of going and getting Delgadina or having Delgadina marry the prince, but she had a daughter of her own who was ugly and bony and not very nice. And she thought, if she could marry the prince, well, they would be wealthy forever and ever. So what she did was she went to her home and she had her daughter, who was bony and ugly and not very nice, put her in the dress. And then they got into the chariot and they rode to Delgadina's house. Well, Delgadina's mother saw this beautiful, beautiful coach arriving with the beautiful white horses. And she called to Delgadina. And she went out and she opened the door. And the old woman said, the prince would love to marry your daughter. Bring her and I shall take her with me. So Delgadina heard, and she heard, well, what a wonderful prince he was. So she put on a beautiful gown. She got into the chariot. And when her mom was getting ready to get into the chariot with her, the old wicked woman said, we will come back for you at another time. And she closed the door and she locked it. And then she whipped the horses and they headed in the opposite direction of where the kingdom was. And Delgadina noticed that they weren't heading in the direction of the kingdom. And she got scared. And then she looked. And behind this black veil, she could see a girl in a dress. Then she got really scared, and she looked out and she noticed that the chariot was going up a steep, steep, steep cliff. Well, when they got to the top of the cliff, the door opened, and the wicked woman pulled Delgadina out of the chariot. She took her fingernails and pressed them into her eyes, and then she pushed Delgadina off of the cliff and into the ocean. And then she sped away back to the kingdom. Now, when she got back to the kingdom, everyone was waiting. Everyone thought Delgadina was going to come out of the chariot, and out came the ugly and bony and not very nice daughter. And when the prince saw her, he was like, because he heard how beautiful Delgadina was. But then he thought, well, beauty can lie within, right? People can be beautiful on the inside. So he said, I will marry her, but I must find out first if this truly is Delgadina. How could he figure it out? Any thoughts? What did he hear about Delgadina?
She could shake money out of her hands.
She could shake gold coins from her hands. So he said to her, why don't you wash your hands before we get married? But this bony girl was clever, and she said, oh, I never wash my hands until morning. And he said, So, guess what? He married her. Yes. Now, as for Delgadina, what do you think happened to her?
She saw the snake.
Well, she landed in the ocean, and she floated away, and she landed on an island. And when she got on the island, she realized that she could no longer see. And a shepherd found her and brought her and fed her and kept her warm and took good care of her. But Delgadina was so sad that she didn't speak. And she stayed and she lived with the shepherd for a long time, and he took good care of her. But every day she would go to the ocean and she would sing a song. La 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 la. And it was a sad song. La 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 la. Well, one day while she was singing her sad song, she heard a voice. And the voice said, Delgadina, why are you so sad? What has happened to you? And she knew that voice. It was the voice of, yes, her little red snake. And she was so happy to hear his voice. And she told the snake everything that had happened to her, and how she could no longer see, and how the shepherd had taken care of her. Well, the snake said, Delgadina, I can help you. Take your hands and rub them into my eyes, and then rub them into your own. So again, she did exactly as the snake told her to do. And she rubbed her hands into the snake's eyes, and then put them into hers. And when she did, guess what? She could see. And she thanked the snake. And the snake said, wet your hands and shake them and collect as many gold coins and give them to the shepherd. And she said, that is a great idea. This would be a great way to pay him back for his kindness. So she did. She wet her hands and she shook them, and gold coins came. And she brought all the gold coins and gave them to the shepherd and told him the story. And he bid her farewell and good luck. And then she got onto the back of the snake, and he swam back to the edge of the water of where the kingdom was. And Delgadina had to go home first. She went home first, told her mother, and then her mother and her headed to the kingdom. Now, as for the prince, he was married, and every day he was very, very unhappy. And I think he realized that this was probably not the Delgadina he had heard, because she was not very nice and not very kind. But he could not prove it, that this was not Delgadina. Well, one day, while they were having a feast, who comes into the castle? Delgadina and her mother. And she said, "I am the real Delgadina." And the prince saw her and said, "You must wash your hands." And she did. She washed her hands. And then she shook them. And guess what? Gold coins came from her hands. Now, when the wicked princess saw this, she got her mother. And they got into this, remember that chariot? The gold chariot? And they took the dress made of diamonds and everything that they could carry, they put into the chariot and they took off. But the prince didn't mind, because now he had found the real Delgadina. Well, they took off and they headed up a cliff, higher and higher and higher. Well, Delgadina, she began to sing. And then she stomped her feet 3 times. And when she did, the snake awakened. And he looked up and he could see that chariot heading at the top of the cliff. And he slithered up the cliff. And there he saw the wicked woman that Delgadina had spoke of. And he wrapped around it and pulled it into the water. And the two were never ever seen again. And as for Delgadina and the prince, well, they married. And whenever they were stumped and they needed a question answered, well, Delgadina would sing and she would stomp her feet 3 times and the red snake would come. And he helped them rule by being a wise snake. And as for Delgadina and the prince, they ruled with love and they ruled with kindness. And guess what? They lived happily ever after. The end. Well, thank you guys. Did you guys enjoy those stories? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you one more quick one. This one you could tell when you get home. Okay? You ready? All right. So there was this gentleman, and he was courting this young woman, and he went to her house for dinner. And he was very nervous, and he dressed up, and he sat there at the dinner table. But he had a runny nose, and he forgot to bring a handkerchief. And he didn't know what to do. And when he sat at the table, he realized that his nose started to run. And there he was, sitting with the girl's family. And he didn't just want to, blow his nose without a handkerchief. So he kind of looked around the room and he thought and he thought and he thought. And he looked and he saw a picture on the wall. And he said, you know what? You see that picture over there? I think you should hang it over there. The end. So, see that picture over there? I think you should hang it over there. She went, You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Miss Alex Gnarly, who, when she was 5, I used to tell her stories. And now she's here. Are you babysitting tonight? Kind of. And she came tonight to listen to stories. So thank you so much, Alex. And you guys, thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Valentine's Day and a wonderful, wonderful Curtaintine's Day. Is it going to snow tomorrow?
Yeah.
What crazy weather, huh? Crazy weather. You know what they say about the weather in New England? If you don't like it, wait a minute. Right? All right, you guys. Thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it.
Watching Medfield TV, community shows.